Have you ever heard of a car that got glowing 5-star reviews and then collected dust in showrooms? It happens more often than you'd think. Some of the most praised cars in Europe, hailed by critics for design, tech, or driving feel, ended up flopping at the dealership. In this video, we're counting down 12 brilliant cars that experts loved, but the public left behind. Get ready because this list gets weird fast. Number 12, Alfa Romeo 159. Let's start with the Alfa Romeo 159. Car critics adored, yet buyers overlooked. Built between 2004 and 2011, the 159 offered stunning execution in the compact executive class. It earned praise for design and driving dynamics, earning praise from Jeremy Clarkson, who called it better looking than a BMW 3 Series. He praised its driver-focused controls and sharp steering. Critics celebrated its ride and handling as a worthy successor to the 156, while styling and materials felt premium. Sales told a different story. Despite decent looks and a 5-star Euro NCAP rating, the Alfa suffered from a mismatch between image and practicality. The heavy curb weight, problematic M32 gearbox, especially on petrol and Celespeed versions, timing belt concerns, and widespread complaints over electronics undermined resale potential. Diesel versions had noisy cabins and DPF issues. Even Clio reviewers recommended only diesel models if thoroughly maintained. Reliability reports varied. Many owners mentioned ECU failures, worn timing chains, and suspension wear. Enthusiast forums flagged rust at subframes and front wishbones, particularly in coastal regions. While some users reported long-term enjoyment in well-maintained examples, high repair costs and dealer inconsistency drove others away. The 159 offered emotional design and rewarding driving, but service complexity, reliability concerns, and poor resale held buyers back, proving once again that hype didn't translate into sales. Number 11, Saab 9.5 second generation. The second generation Saab 9.5 should have been a comeback story. It arrived in 2010 with a sleek Scandinavian design, a spacious cabin, and a refined driving feel. The turbocharged engines gave it solid performance, while the interior boasted a futuristic layout that felt fresh, even in a field dominated by conservative German rivals. By the time the 9.5 landed in showrooms, General Motors had already announced Saab was being dropped. Although Spyker swooped in to save the brand, the damage was done. Dealers were uncertain, marketing was non-existent, and buyers didn't want to gamble on a brand whose future was murky at best. That uncertainty killed any momentum the car could have built. The 9.5 was produced in such limited numbers that it became a ghost on the road almost immediately. Despite being praised for its ride comfort, strong engines, and cabin quality, the timing of its release made it more of a footnote in Saab's history than a new beginning, a victim of circumstance more than poor engineering. Let's get into the top 10, and speaking of underappreciated beauties, hold on because these ones had premium DNA. Still didn't get the crowd. Number 10, Renault Clio V6. The Renault Clio V6 was unlike anything else on the road when it launched. Renault ripped out the back seats of a regular Clio, shoved in a 3-liter V6 engine, and created one of the most radical hot hatches ever built. On track or in the right hands, it was a riot. Quick, raw, and packed with attitude. Journalists raved about it, praising its grip, the unique layout, and the sheer madness of such a car existing at all. But despite the buzz from the press, the Clio V6 proved to be a hard sell. It was expensive, priced in the same territory as some sports cars, and it came with trade-offs. Practicality was almost non-existent, running costs were high, and the early models were twitchy and difficult to handle. For the average buyer looking at a Clio badge, it didn't make much sense. Renault later refined the chassis with a Phase 2 version, making it more composed, but by then the image had stuck. It became a niche car for hardcore enthusiasts and collectors, not a volume seller. Today it's highly sought after, but during its production run, it struggled to get the attention it deserved at the dealership level. Number 9, Lancia Thesis. The Lancia Thesis was Italy's attempt to take on the might of Mercedes, BMW, and Audi in the executive segment. It debuted with bold styling, luxurious materials, and advanced tech that rivaled the best in the class. The ride quality was smooth, the cabin was serene, and the engine range offered a mix of performance and refinement. Critics across Europe appreciated the effort, often calling it one of the most charming executive salons of its era. However, the car's avant-garde design proved to be too far off the mainstream for buyers who preferred the conservative look of a 5 Series or E-Class. Lancia's brand image had also faded outside of Italy, and the Thesis lacked the badge credibility needed to pull in serious executive customers. Add to that limited dealership networks, higher than average maintenance costs, and a generally indifferent marketing campaign, and the car never found its audience. The Thesis remained in production from 2001 to 2009, but never made a dent in the sales charts. It became an automotive curiosity, something people admired in reviews but walked past in showrooms. Its fate reflected the broader decline of Lancia as a brand, despite the product being more than capable of success. Now, keep your eyes locked because this next one should have been a British legend. Number 8, Jaguar X-Type. The X-Type was Jaguar's attempt at cracking into the compact executive car segment, and on paper the mission made sense. It needed something to rival the BMW 3 Series, something stylish, slightly posh, and easier on the wallet than their bigger sedans. So in came the X-Type, a small salon with the right proportions, all-wheel drive on some models, and that leaping cat on the grille. Critics were cautiously optimistic. It had decent ride quality, respectable refinement from the outside, looked like a proper Jag. But buyers didn't bite the way Jaguar hoped. Many quickly realized that the platform it sat on came from the Ford Mondeo. That alone caused waves. Enthusiasts who wanted the grace and pedigree of a Jaguar didn't love the front-wheel drive layout on base trim. The cabin didn't scream luxury either, with materials and design cues that felt too close to a mainstream Ford. Despite the estate or sport wagon version trying to inject some cool factor, the damage had been done. The X-Type did bring new customers to Jaguar, but it never earned their loyalty. Sales trailed off and it quietly disappeared in 2009, leaving behind a legacy of what could have been had the badge been a little more and the car been a little less Mondeo. Number 7, Peugeot RCZ. Peugeot had a go at shaking things up with the RCZ, and design was their strongest weapon. The double bubble roof, flared arches, and curvy silhouettes stood out from anything else the brand had ever built. It was one of those cars that made people stop and look. Even critics were taken aback, especially when they got behind the wheel. The RCZ had solid grip, a responsive steering rack, and was surprisingly composed on twisty roads. It even drew comparisons to the Audi TT, which was no small feat. So what happened? For all its visual charm and driving competence, the RCZ struggled to move units. One of the biggest challenges was the badge. Peugeot didn't have the prestige to sway image-conscious buyers, especially in a segment filled with premium alternatives. The RCZ wasn't a cheap car either, so those spending that kind of money wanted a brand that came with bragging rights. Even though reviews consistently praised it was a well-balanced and sporty coupe, showroom foot traffic didn't follow. It quietly bowed out after a short production run. Years later, it's developed a bit of a cult following, but that only came after it had left dealerships almost unnoticed. A design statement, a critical success, but a commercial ghost. Number 6, Opel Insignia OPC. This was a car that showed Opel could flex. The Insignia OPC, known as the Vauxhall VXR in some markets, packed a turbocharged 2.8-liter V6 under the hood and all-wheel drive to help plant all that power. It came with aggressive styling, meaty brakes, and a chassis tuned for high-speed comfort and cornering precision. Critics were genuinely impressed. It had the dynamics, the power, and a refined feel that earned it positive reviews across the board. The issue with the Insignia OPC was perception. Buyers didn't see Opel as a brand for performance. They saw them as functional, affordable, maybe family-friendly, but not something that you'd take to a track day or brag about in the car meet. On top of that, the Insignia OPC carried high running costs. Fuel economy wasn't friendly, parts could be pricey, and insurance wasn't forgiving. Even though the car offered BMW-like performance figures at a lower cost, its biggest hurdle remained the badge on the nose. People weren't ready to pay performance premiums for something that didn't scream premium. Sales were lukewarm at best, and while the OPC badge had its loyalists, the broader market left it on the sidelines. A properly engineered machine, just lacking the right badge to go mainstream. Get ready because the top 5 is full of misunderstood experiments that critics swore would take over the world. Number 5, Citroën C6. The Citroën C6 was built for people who wanted something different from the usual German executive car routine. It had presence, sleek lines, and a ride comfort level that few could rival, thanks to its advanced hydro-pneumatic suspension. The interior was minimalist and futuristic, and the car floated across tarmacs like it was surfing clouds. Journalists praised it for daring to stick to the brand's quirky DNA while delivering serene long-distance cruising. It oozed French character, class, and calm. But the problems began the moment buyers had to put their money down. The C6 never shook off concerns about reliability and poor resale value. Executive car buyers wanted certainty, prestige, and assurance. Citroën, for all its creativity, didn't provide that in the minds of most people shopping in this space. Business fleets avoided it. Private buyers went for more recognizable names. The looks were too unconventional for some, the tech too polarizing, and the brand lacked the clout to command loyalty in a segment filled with status-driven decisions. So even though critics were charmed, sales numbers painted a different story. The C6 became a cult classic for design enthusiasts and comfort levels. During its time on sale, it failed to gain any serious momentum. A bold gamble that was undersold in its own era. Number 4, Volkswagen Phaeton. Volkswagen threw everything it had at the Phaeton. Built on the same platform as the Bentley Continental Flying Spur, it came with a W12 engine, air suspension, and enough insulation to silence a highway. It was engineered in secret by Ferdinand Piëch with one mission: to make a VW that could cruise at 300 kilometers per hour all day with a cabin temperature of exactly 22 degrees Celsius. No joke. On paper, it ticked every box a luxury buyer could want. Critics praised the craftsmanship, the quietness, and the bank vault solidity. In reviews, it often stood toe-to-toe with the Mercedes S-Class and BMW 7 Series. It had limousine options, a touchscreen system years ahead of its time, and impeccable ride quality. But in reality, buyers didn't see it that way. Volkswagen simply didn't carry the prestige expected in this segment. For all its efforts, the Phaeton never overcame the badge on its nose. People balked at the idea of paying Bentley prices for a VW, even one built better than some actual Bentleys. It languished on showroom floors with dealers struggling to justify the price. Today, it's mostly remembered by car nerds and auction watchers. The Phaeton aimed for greatness, got critical respect, and still somehow fell flat in the marketplace. Taking us in the top 3 is a car that tried to revive a brand, but instead nearly buried it. Number 3, Alfa Romeo Brera. The Alfa Romeo Brera was one of those cars that turned heads wherever it went. Designed by the legendary Giorgetto Giugiaro, it looked like something you'd expect to see parked in front of a movie premiere. It had coupe aggression blended in with the Grand Tour's proportions, and critics took notice. Early reviews hailed its visual drama and driving poise. It came with all-wheel drive options, a potent V6, and a cabin that, while tight, felt upscale and deeply Italian. But buyers weren't feeling the vibe. For all its charm, the Brera didn't deliver where it needed to. It was heavier than it should have been, meaning performance felt dampened. The platform it was based on was more comfort-oriented, and that didn't help its sportiness either. Enthusiasts wanted sharper handling and less bulk. Reliability also raised red flags, another issue that often plagues Alfa's sales success. So while the Brera had the aesthetic side locked down and gained approval from automotive journalists across Europe, customers were hesitant. It didn't find many homes. Today, the Brera enjoys cult status and has aged gracefully, gaining appreciation in hindsight. During its prime years, the disconnect between reviewer praise and buyer hesitation left it struggling in the market. Number 2, Lotus Evora. Lotus is known for lightweight purist machines. When they launched the Evora, people expected more of the same, but with added comfort. Lotus delivered something that checked every enthusiast's box. The Evora had a sweet chassis, near-perfect balance, and an exotic look that wasn't overdone. It handled corners like a track weapon, yet rides smoothly enough for daily use. The interior felt like an upgrade from past Lotus cabins, and the Toyota-sourced engine gave it a dose of reliability that buyers typically didn't associate with the brand. Critics lauded it for blending practicality with performance, something rare in its price segment. Yet somehow it didn't catch fire in sales charts. Pricing played a big role. At launch, it hovered in Porsche Cayman and 911 territory, and that comparison hurt. Lotus didn't have the brand recognition or dealership network to convert that attention into purchases. Many buyers walked into showrooms curious, a few walked out with keys. The car's refinement was improved, but some still felt it lagged behind the German alternatives in luxury feel. Despite positive media attention and awards, the Evora remained a rare sight. It gave Lotus a push forward, but never the commercial success the brand hoped for. Finally, the most critically adored flop of them all, number 1, Renault Aventime. When Renault launched the Aventime, the automotive world didn't know what to make of it. Half coupe, half MPV, this was a vehicle unlike anything else on the market. It featured a panoramic roof, massive pillarless windows, and suicide doors. The seats were high, the view was commanding, and the materials used were impressive. Renault marketed it as a grand tour for people who didn't want something boring. Critics respected the risk. They called it futuristic, daring, and genuinely luxurious. From a design and innovation standpoint, it was ahead of its time, but that same uniqueness made it hard to sell. Buyers couldn't place it in a category. It looked like a concept car, but came with family car functionality. Those who wanted a coupe thought it was too bulky. Those who wanted space opted for actual minivans or SUVs. It lived in no man's land as it was too bold to be safe and too unconventional to build confidence. Add to that Renault's decision to launch it right as large MPVs were falling out of favor, the writing was on the wall. Production halted just a few years after it began, but even in failure, the Aventime earned a place in history. It's the perfect example of a car praised for thinking differently, even if almost no one bought one. Which of these cars do you feel deserves a second chance? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching. enjoy more exciting videos, click play on the video on your screen and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when a new video drops.